Let's speak about today's speakers. Today we have two incredible human beings. So first off, we have Kirsty Fraser, who I would regard as possibly one of my favorite people that I've encountered on the past 10 years of the Marketing Meetup journey. Just a wholehearted, smart, wonderful person who is going to come and educate us today. We also have Rich Crossley. And so Rich is a new friend coming along with Kirsty. But the greatest compliment that I can offer to Rich is that I've had a couple of people unprompted, when I've mentioned his name, go, Rich, and then tell me a couple of stories about his kindness, which I think goes a long way. So even though I don't know Rich too well, other people do, and they speak so well of him. So I think that's a really lovely trait to carry yourself as you go through this world. Today, Kirsty and Rich have a slightly unenviable task to speak about using AI to do more when you have less. And of course, that's a large topic. And so the way that we've curated today's session is bringing it around something that we did towards the back end of last year called the School of AI, which the Marketing Meetup ran with Movable Ink. This was a 4-week program where we took the Marketing Meetup community through a series of topics, and there was an email sequence associated with that. If you weren't on that program, don't worry. Today is a standalone thing, but it will, and we may make reference to the school as part of today's session. But as I say, don't worry. You didn't need to be part of it to understand what's going on today. However, if you would like to be on the school, or you would like to get the information, then you can go to the QR code on screen right now, and you can enroll in the school. And you'll be submitted into the sequence of lessons that came from the School of AI. You'd be super welcome to be part of that. Finally, before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors for today's session. We have Wistia, MailChimp, Cambridge Marketing College, Frontify, and Planable. We speak about these on rotation as the weeks go by, but without these amazing companies, then we won't be able to bring these sessions to you, and indeed Movable Ink as well today. Incredible companies with incredible human beings behind them. So please do take the time to say thank you to them afterwards, or at least note down them for when you need them. All of that said, let me introduce two legends to the screen. Kirsty, Rich, thank you so much for being here, and welcome. It's over to you.
Thank you so much for having us, and also for those incredibly kind words, Joe. I was got a little bit emotional, so I'm glad there was a bit of a pause before I actually had to start.
You're
welcome. I'm just glad you've met the people that had kind things to say about me. I'm not honest.
Bang on. Well, yeah, I didn't mention the other ones. Over to you.
Right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And as I say, Joe, that was an incredible introduction. And we all know that you are one of the most kindest and incredible marketers as well, and have created a wonderful community. So we're both really honored to be here. So without further ado, let's talk you through our agenda. So we're going to start with a quick overview of who we are. We've kind of done a brief introduction, and then why we wanted to work on the AI School with the Marketing Meetup. And then we're going to lead into decoding the AI landscape. So really moving from the not so basic basics to agentic AI. What does all this mean? Kind of delving a little bit more into the terminology around AI and demystifying some of that. Then we'll go into strategy over tactics. So kind of breaking free from that traditional playbook. You know, how is AI shifting customer behaviors? How are we moving people from buckets and really moving to that true one-to-one personalization, which will lead nicely into that segmentation to true personalization section. And kind of, as I say, mentioning around those buckets and kind of finding people kind of put into that same thing, categorized in a way that just doesn't fit every individual. And kind of walk through, what does that mean? What is true personalization? I think we've been talking about it for years, but can we actually achieve that now?
Yeah, and then we'll move on to what that really means as the future of your career and our career as marketers. So how we can be using AI to move from a reactive variation to something a little bit more strategic, and how it can help with that awful word, which I'm sure we've all felt at some point in our careers, which is burnout. You know, how we can help with automation that improves the quality of life for us whilst we're doing our busy jobs. And then our final part will be around our school summary and an open Q&A. So we'll have a condensed takeaway from those 12 lessons, and then we'll be opening up the floor for you to answer some of your submitted questions as well.
Okay, everyone has seen, well, you've seen this image at the beginning. It was used to kind of promote our session today, put together by the Marketing Meetup. We think they totally nailed it. Loving my jawline. Rich has taken that image to his personal trainer. So thanks very much for the Marketing Meetup for that fabulous AI image. But given the nature of the content of this, we knew we had to create our own. We think the Marketing Meetup smashed the brief, but we also wanted to, show that we've got some ideas and put some prompts in and create our own version of ourselves. Just to give you a bit of an overview about me, if you've not met me before, I am Senior Director of International and Lifecycle Marketing at Movable Ink. I have been in SaaS for many years now, and in marketing even longer. I am generally a dinosaur in marketing now, and I love everything about it, and I've been through many changes in marketing, and AI is just another thing that I've had to navigate, I suppose, within my career.
My name's Rich. Thanks everyone for having me join you all today as well. I am Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Movable Ink, and in my role that is to really highlight our community as well as how our product can affect change across lots of different businesses globally. My professional version of how I use AI, there's a lot of times where we will do customer hero and spotlight videos, and I can often leverage AI to take a transcript from a recording that I've had, maybe 2 hours worth of video footage, and support me in pulling out stories and quotes that I can then, idealize and innovate myself afterwards. So there's definite efficiency gains to how I'm using it in my day-to-day role.
Okay, so we're going to throw this to you, and we're just going to ask you to maybe put in the chat so we can get a feel for where people are at the minute in their AI journey. So we've got the skeptic, so I'm not sold on the hype just yet. And kudos to anyone who's in this category and is here today, because clearly you are trying to at least start understanding about, is this, do you want to embrace this technology? There's the explorer, so you've got ChatGPT tab open, you're just playing around, you're getting a feel for it. There's the builder. So AI is a formal part of your weekly marketing workflow. And I think that's kind of where I feel me and my team are in at the minute. And then there's the pro. I'm not just using AI, I'm building systems with it, which actually, again, if you're in this category, that's quite terrifying for me. I apologize if we can't deliver on what you need today. But yeah, great to see that. Okay, lots of builders and explorers in here today. Perfect. Oh, there's a pro. Oh my God, pressure.
Oh. Quickly remove them from the webinar.
Oh, another pro. Oh, okay. Don't judge us is all I'm going to say. Excellent. Thanks so much. Okay, we can probably move on to the next slide. But I think looking at that, most marketers, everyone's still figuring it out. I think I am. I think the pace of change that's happening at the minute, it's incredibly hard to keep up. And I think it's a learning curve that is shared across the industry. And I think even people that maybe have used it are still like, I'm still learning and adapting depending on the results they're getting and what they're getting back from it. So most people in this chat, I feel like, you're in good company where you are right now. So just to give you some reassurance, I suppose, the stats kind of back up what the chat is here, right? 70% of marketers feel challenged keeping up with AI, right? But they recognize the need to adapt. And I think that's probably where everyone is right now. Whatever happens, maybe in your career right now, it's not relevant, but in the future, I think it's going to be, especially if you are thinking about moving on or growing in your career, it's something you should be thinking about. Only 30% of marketers feel fully confident that in their AI knowledge and their skills today. And again, yeah, I feel like that, I feel not quite confident enough all the time. I've, in fact, whilst putting this presentation together, I've learned from people when I've been asking questions, and I'd be like, well, that's a really good idea of how to use AI. 90% of marketing teams are investing in AI training. And I think this is really important. I think education, and that's again why we looked at doing the AI school, education is the most important thing right now. Know about it, even if you're not using it. And around 70% of marketers say that organizations are in the beginning stages of incorporating AI. So everyone is in that, not everyone is at that pro stage. A lot of people are like, we are just starting to add it in. Maybe you've got AI councils or people that are actually starting to explore how you can start to find ways in which to use it within your company in the most effective way. Okay, so I think one of the things that we are finding as marketers is really preparing for the future isn't optional. So deciding whether or not you want to embrace AI really isn't an option. I think you need to learn about it and you need to invest time in it to stay competitive, to make sure you remain relevant. But I also think it's incredibly important, there's marketing leaders on this call today, that it shouldn't just be on those more junior members of your team to start learning. I think it should be something that is built into what you're doing as a marketing team. And as leaders, we can be supporting our teams with that. And I don't think that means that you have to do really expensive training, bringing people in. By all means, I think that's a great way to invest in your team. But also I think there can be simple ways. Things that we do as a marketing team is sharing what we are all, how we're all using it. So that kind of knowledge share, going out to events, the marketing meetup have loads of real life events. They have sessions like this in which you can start learning that way and encouraging your team to stay relevant. And then just finding some tools and just encouraging people just to do it, and maybe each week setting tasks that they can be doing. But I think the main thing is to kind of end this sort of fear around it and really start getting your team to embrace it. I don't think it's optional not to understand AI anymore. And what you'll see as well is that Fortune 500 companies are investing in it. We are seeing a lot more investing in that AI literacy. And I think, again, if we want to stay competitive, we can all be doing it. It's just making sure that we are investing in training. And as I say, you don't have to be paying a lot of money, but there are definitely tools and people out there that are talking about it and ways in which you can educate yourself. And again, even testing, there's so many free tools. You can be testing all the time and trying it out for yourself. Don't fear that. Just go and just have a little go and a play with it.
Yeah, I think, Kirsty, we were talking earlier today or yesterday, and we're saying, a lot of it's great that companies are bringing in this AI literacy, and, if they can afford to put on these global, company-wide trainings, it's fantastic. Some of the best things that my team has ever learned about how to leverage AI is from their personal life into their work life.
Yeah.
So they found an efficiency gain of, something that they're doing at home, and they've suddenly had this light bulb moment, which goes, oh, well, this is very similar to what I have to do day to day in my job. And maybe I could use this kind of formatting and function there as well.
Definitely. And this is just something we just recently ran a report and we surveyed marketers in the US and the UK. And it's not going to be released till next week. So you are the only people to get a sneak peek. And I was only allowed to choose one stat. And I chose this one because I am an international marketer and I do regional marketing within my company. And working across multiple markets, obviously I'm fascinated in cultural differences. And as you can see here, I always find that the talk track is very much the Americans are very early adopters, and they have always been early adopters of technology. And I think that, that definitely happened with AI, and, sometimes we track behind. But what you can see here on this slide is actually the UK are tracking slightly ahead when it comes to customer journey mapping. And I thought I'd just delve a bit into my thoughts around this. I think in the UK, we aren't just trying to sell more. And I think actually I've seen in here around privacy, around AI and privacy, some comments in there. We're trying to make the machine work better. So because our privacy laws are stricter, we find it safer and more effective to use AI to map and fix the entire journey rather than just gambling on like hyper-personalized content, which is kind of where the focus in the US is. And that might, because I think that kind of really hyper-personalized content might cross a regulatory or a cultural line. So sometimes we feel a little bit, what's the word, ick, I suppose, if it's a little bit like kind of creepy. And I think that's one thing always to remember when we're doing that personalization, is to like always assess the human element of it, and like, is it creepy or is it personalized? Is it relevant to them? And as a B2B marketer, I always look to our clients for inspiration. Our clients are mainly like enterprise businesses in the B2C space. So what I'm taking away from this is that they're really trying to focus on where AI can be valuable to them, and will it make the right impact? In the US, they can afford to be a little bit more aggressive and salesy. That really works for that market. But in the UK, we're a little bit more reserved. We need to adapt to our audience and find ways to scale and support our marketing that will have the most impact on our results. And I think we just need to be a little bit more considered in the way we do this and the way we use AI. As I say, we're launching this report next week. So this is the only stat I was allowed to share. And you are the only people to get a sneak peek of these results. So we will be sharing, if you want to see the rest of the report, I will put the waitlist link into the chat when Rich takes over presenting the slides. Which is now.
Oh. So that's a little bit of background into why we think educating ourselves on AI is important. But let's dive into a bit more about what we've covered and why. So I'm not going to get too techie, but I am going to mention a few technical phrases. And if there are any more questions, as always, please do pop them in the chat and we'll try and answer as many as we can towards the end. But before we just discuss how a marketer's role is going to evolve within the AI landscape, I feel we really need to align on the vocabulary of the technology itself. So at Movable Ink, we view the AI foundation as 3 distinct layers of capability. Now, our first one is machine learning, which I'm nicknaming the optimizer. So machine learning, think of this as your optimization layer. It's not generating new creative from scratch. Rather, it's analyzing massive amounts of data like engagement patterns to make your existing assets perform better. And it's strictly a numerical improvement. And an example of this would be predicting the exact millisecond or second to send an email to maximize an open rate based on an audience. Now, as we move down, the second is agentic AI, which I'm going to nickname the creator today. I'm sure we've all, in the past couple of months, really started to hear this word agentic more and more from many of the different software companies that you might be using within your tech stack. This is where the tech starts to take autonomous action. So it moves beyond analyzing data to actually generating content. But, and this is a big but, if I can, it's crucial, it operates strictly within the brand rules that you've defined. So think of those as guardrails. So it's about production at scale. So for instance, generating a personalized mobile push notification, but for thousands of users instantly to drive conversions. And the third one is autonomous marketing, which I'm nicknaming today the manager. So we have autonomous marketing. This is the layer that manages complexity. So it takes full campaigns end to end. It's dynamic adaptation. Instead of you manually adjusting a drip campaign every week, the AI adjusts the content, the schedule, and segmentation in real time based on performance. So those are the tools, the engine, the creator, and the manager. But the big question is, when the tools get this powerful, what happens to us? So let's look at the human evolution. So the AI evolution, at each step, there is a human guiding the strategy. And to kick off, I want to address this elephant in the room when we talk about AI. Most of us picture a text box where we type a question in and we get an answer. But as we've seen over the last few weeks of the AI school, we are moving far beyond that chatbot era. And this staircase represents the journey from using AI as a simple tool to treating it as a strategic teammate. And at the base, we have reactive assistance. So this is where most people start. It's where I started myself when we first started seeing tools like ChatGPT become publicly available and free to use. So most people are starting using tools like this to draft an email or summarize a meeting. If anyone's used Gmail or other services, you may have seen that it has a recommended response for emails that you might receive, which can sometimes be good and sometimes completely miss the mark from the empathy perspective. But at this stage, you as a marketer are the instructor. So the AI does nothing until you give it a specific command. And it's useful for saving time on single tasks, but it doesn't understand your broader business context or your long-term goals. As we move up the ladder to rule-based automation, the AI really starts to handle workflows. So this is those if this, then that logic, which we've used in marketing for years. It's nothing new. So if a customer abandons a cart, send an email. Here, you're the architect. You build the tracks and the AI drives the train. It's efficient and scalable. However, it's really rigid. If a customer's behavior changes, the track might lead them to the wrong place. Now, this is when it gets exciting and where we are headed / almost here, agentic AI. Unlike the levels below it on the ladder, an agent doesn't just follow a script, it follows a goal. So when you move into this tier, your role as a marketer shifts to the strategist. So instead of telling AI what to do, you tell it what to achieve. For example, reduce churn in our high-value UK segment. The AI perceives the data, the reasons that these customers are leaving, maybe due to delivery friction, and it acts by coordinating the right message at the right time. And it also self-corrects and uses different tools to solve the problem that you've defined, which is stopping you from achieving your goal. The most important part of this is that even at the agent level, the human is the one setting the North Star. So the AI is handling the execution and the scale, but you provide the empathy, you provide the ethics, and you still provide the strategic vision. So we aren't being replaced, we're actually being promoted from task fixers to orchestrators. Now, I think that as a LinkedIn job update sounds pretty nifty, so feel free to share that as I'm now the orchestrator rather than the fixer. Now, having an agentic orchestrator sounds fabulous, but where does it actually drive ROI? It drives ROI by solving the biggest problem in marketing: irrelevance. The core argument is that AI works best in environments where generic feels like spam. If you send a generic newsletter, that's fine. But if I send you a generic offer when you're standing right outside my brick and mortar store, that's a missed opportunity already. We use AI here to bridge the gap between data and content. So it takes the real-time data feeds that we all have, like inventory levels or live location, and it turns them into highly personalized content instantly. So instead of sending a push notification because it's Tuesday, we're sending it because AI has detected has the ability to detect a changing behavior. So that might be a browsing activity or a location. And it has the ability to react faster than we as humans ever could with the volume of data that we sit on and is increasing every single day. So to close out this section, use machine learning to optimize, use agents to build, and deploy them specifically in these high-speed, dynamic moments where relevance really is king. I want to be really clear. We aren't here to tell you that the way that you've done marketing for years is wrong, because who are we to do that? Those foundational principles, understanding the customer, brand integrity, creative storytelling, are more important now than they ever have been before. The problem is that the modern digital landscape has buried those principles under a mountain of manual tasks. And you can put a show of hands if you agree with me in the chat, but I strongly believe that we're expected to do too much with too little support in many of these tasks that we have to do. And we lose the message and the goal that we're trying to achieve. And this is the why behind AI. I was going to say the why, but that doesn't really work because I'm not from the north. So if we just use these tools to speed up a workflow that already leaves us burnt out, we haven't won. We use AI to clear the deck. We use it to handle the execution so that your gut instinct, that thing that makes you such an impressive marketer, that human sense check that no machine can replicate, can lead the way. And you're moving from the person who has to hit send on every single task to the strategist who ensures the machine is reflecting the heart of the brand that you love and work for. Now, our customers don't move in straight lines anymore, sadly. I wish they still did. But they jump from social to email to web to brick and mortar in seconds. And traditional playbooks are just too slow now to keep up. What AI is there to do is it's going to allow us to shift from planning for the average to responding to the individual in that moment. And this shift forces us to break that old-fashioned playbook that we've been running for so long. So if you look at the left of this slide, this is how we've operated for decades. So we relied on fixed campaign calendars. We decided months ago what to say today. That doesn't make sense. Today, that message is likely to be irrelevant. So we need to move to real-time response to intent. Previously, we relied on broad segmentation. We bucketed people into large groups. Now we have the ability and the option to execute individual level journeys based on individual live behavior. In the past, we relied on manual optimization. We waited for a weekly report to make a change, sometimes a bi-weekly report, sometimes a monthly report. It depends if you got round to that additional task, which was in that mountain of work that we've suddenly got to do. Now AI can handle the masses of data for autonomous optimization. So it can correct the course the second performance dips, rather than the month or the week that report hits your inbox. The old playbook was about control, and the new playbook is about fluidity. So I've talked a lot about theory, moving on from static calendars to fluid, AI-driven strategies, but what does that actually look like in the wild? So during the most high-pressure retail moment of this year, last year, let's look at Currys through their use of our AI platform, DaVinci. So they had a challenge, they had a need. Like many of us, Currys was facing a classic volume versus relevance problem during Black Friday. And in the old world, their team would manually be slogging through siloed data. They were relying on batch and blast emails where everyone got the same generic offer. The risk in this is in the noise of Black Friday now, generic emails don't just get ignored, they actually cause our audiences fatigue. So Currys knew that if they stuck to the traditional manual playbook, they couldn't move fast enough to capture attention. The solution, or their want, was actually they didn't just want to send more emails. They wanted to send smarter ones. So they shifted to this fluid strategy that I just discussed with agentic execution. So instead of a marketer manually guessing which creative would work, they handed the keys to our AI model using DaVinci. And with that fluidity, the AI analyzed customer signals in real time to determine the best message, the best product, and the best send time and subject line for each individual. It wasn't a static blast. It was millions of unique decisions being made instantly. And the outcome is that the results were transformative, not just for the metrics, but for their efficiency. So there's a couple of stats on screen as well, but engagement, because the content was hyper relevant, they actually saw a 49% lift in click-through rate. This isn't it. Revenue. Most importantly, as a retailer, they saw a 30% increase in conversion rate during their peak trading period. 30% increase over that Black Friday, Cyber Monday week. That's massive. And finally, the efficiency. And here really is the kicker. They actually reduced their send volume. So they sent fewer emails, but made more money because the AI ensured that they were only targeting people with high intent. This is the power of leveraging the AI foundation. It's allowed curries to stop shouting at everyone and start speaking to individuals, even at the massive scale of Black Friday. And Kirsty, if you can, drop the full case study link in the chat for everyone to read later, as there's a bit in there. I'm a tech geek. I speak in ones and zeros. I'm very binary. But there's a bit in there on their propensity modeling. And to me, it's absolutely fascinating. So if it's something that you're interested in, please do go to the case study and have a look. And to close out this section, I want to leave you all with a critical analogy. AI is the engine, but you are the steering wheel. We use AI to handle the scale, to process the millions of signals that would drown a human team. But we, the marketers, are there for the integrity. And I've seen this pop up in the chat a little bit already. We are the ones making sure that those 1 million emails actually sound like our brand and respect our customers. When we think of brand voice and empathy, think of it this way. The AI can predict exactly what a customer wants to buy. That's math. But only a human understands the tone required to sell it. If you leave AI unchecked, it's going to optimize for the click. It doesn't care if it sounds pushy or robotic. And your job, our job as marketers, is to provide the empathy. You ensure that even when we are automating at scale, the message feels like a warm handshake rather than a transaction. Secondly, you're also the moral compass. So this is exactly what we mean when speaking about ethical governance. And again, I've seen that a little pop up in the chat as well. Now, this slide mentions service versus surveillance, and this is massive. AI is hungry. It will use every data point it can find to maximize a metric. Now, your job is to draw the line. You are the one who looks at the data strategy and asks, is this helpful or is this a bit creepy? You ensure that the customer feels served rather than feeling stalked. And finally, never forget that AI is a historian. It is trained on data from the past, and the past is often reference. It's not innovation. So it can iterate on what has worked for you before, but it cannot dream up something entirely new. And your job, you are the futurist. You come up with the big idea, the campaign that defines the data. We use AI to test your ideas. Maybe it involves that A/B testing structure that we've all used for a long, long time. But we rely on you to have them. So don't be afraid of the engine. Let it run fast, but keep your hands firmly on the wheel, because that combination of marketer and machine is really, from my perspective, how we can win leveraging AI in the future. And I'll pass back to you, Kirsty, for our next section.
Hello again. Thanks for that, Rich. Okay, so when I put this image into the slides, Rich had no idea what it was about. So just quick, I was trying to find an image to represent like true personalization. And actually, this was my husband's idea. He said, well, everyone has their own McDonald's order, don't they? And I'm like, well, the irony is that I don't, but I'm still going to use it. So my daughter's is a Happy Meal. She has chicken nuggets. She does the apple slices to make me feel better about the fact that I'm getting her a McDonald's, and then she orders a juice. But I thought, Rich, you must have. Do you have a McDonald's order? What's your McDonald's order?
I do. And I mentioned the word stalked and creepy and things in my last little section. And honestly, when I saw this in the slides, I will just say that I thought that Kirsty was watching me, because I did have a McDonald's last night. So I thought I'd keep that bag and show everyone. I would like to say my body is a temple, but it's a temple that has golden arches sometimes. My personalized McDonald's order is that I love gherkins. And this is either a love or hate. Like, people are probably going to hate me in the chat for this. Some people will adore me, but I get extra gherkin slices on anything that I order. I also, if anyone noticed the McDonald's secret menu of the holidays, there were Grinch fries, which were gherkin flavored fries. And I am so disappointed that they didn't keep that on as something that I could personalize for this year. Yeah.
Nice. Oh my God.
I've sent the chat into disarray because of gherkins. I
Someone's
apologize.
put Wallies in there as well, which is what my dad calls gherkins as well. I didn't think anyone else called them that. Anyway, okay, so back to it. So now we're going to obviously just want to start looking at really how we have been, like what the traditional playbook is versus where we are trying to get to. So the segmentation trap. And actually, when I read this, kind of when I was putting together this slide, and I read out to myself out loud, we've been treating people like averages, but nobody is average. It kind of makes me think of nobody puts baby in the corner. But again, I might be showing my age there. But yes, so traditionally, we've obviously had these buckets, and even then we were talking about personalization, but obviously that really has been a bit of a trap. It kind of relies on clustering, like grouping people by their past behavior or demographics, and we've all been there when it's been like it's the Amazon example, isn't it, when someone bought a loose seat and then they just kept getting served up like the loose seat forevermore after that. Do you not need a new loose seat? Why not? It's really assuming that everyone in segment A wants the same thing today and continues to want the same thing, and really that's not the case. It really isn't that kind of true personalization. And obviously, as Rich has mentioned, there's so much data. It is physically impossible for a human to be able to kind of take all that data and really be able to achieve that. So segmentation is static, but life is dynamic. And a high value customer segment doesn't really tell you that a specific customer just had their credit card stolen or is currently browsing for a gift for someone else. So we kind of continue on those rules. We really are stopping ourselves from being able to grow and really make that valuable customer into this truly valuable customer that continues to come back and enjoy shopping and is sort of given those the sort of compelled to come back if we are not serving them up content in the moment that they are in. And next slide. So obviously the AI is there and it's looking at patterns and it's looking at data and it's understanding all of that, really filtering through of like what we as individuals would never be able to kind of filter through that and that kind of speed and level. But we've also all seen it go wrong. I mentioned the loose seat example, that kind of the ad for the product that you've just bought. And that happens when there's no human empathy in the loop. Our goal isn't like automated marketing. So I think that, again, there's been lots of questions in the chat around, well, if we're trusting it, how can we trust it to actually to do the right job? We know there's errors, exactly that, right? It's about augmented marketing. So we use AI to find the patterns, but we use our experience to ensure the message remains helpful, it remains timely, but most of all, it remains human. And I think that is the most important thing that we as marketers can do, is remember that there is an individual that is receiving your email or your ad or whatever it is that you're serving up to them. There is a person at the end of that receiving that, and it's got to, compel them to want to take the action that you're trying to get them to do. By moving to kind of an AI-driven personalization, we aren't throwing away the concept of relevance. We're going to finally achieve it. So it's moving from maybe a tailor who can only make, say, 3 sizes of suits, and to a tailor who can measure every customer instantly. So you're not going to a shop and just getting a suit off the peg. You're going into one and they're like, let me create the one for you. You can still choose the fabric. You can choose the style. You are the designer. The marketer is the designer of everything that's going out, but AI is delivering to you the patterns of behavior. It's the one that's kind of, in this reference, sewing at speed that no human can ever match. And it allows us to move away from what I mentioned before, that kind of creepy tracking, towards this individualized service. And you are the person at the heart that are delivering that. The marketer is incredibly important to delivering that. So how do we to wrap up the presentation, we want to kind of address the most sensitive topic, which I think we've been kind of touching on throughout this, and I think people have really been grasping that. It's like job security. Like, what is the future for marketers in this space? And again, like we've used a little analogy of marketers and of being the chef. So you're so that is a reference to Ratatouille, in case you're not a parent and you don't actually know what that is. So we spent the last decade being reactive, kind of responding to every fire and every data request. And I think AI is the tool that allows us to be proactive. I think, what is asked of marketers, like, well, certainly from my experience as a B2B marketer, it's been the amount of data that we've been having to consume. It's just been almost uncontrollable. So many people have the data there, but are unable to use it, unable to scale to be able to access and use that data in a meaningful way. And that's where AI could be the tool to allow us to be proactive in that way. It handles the support at scale. So you can return to being a strategic leader. You aren't being replaced. And Rich mentioned this before. It's almost like a promotion. You're being free to do the work you actually went into marketing for. Like, I feel like I've said this many times in my career. It's like, what did I go to university for? Why did I study marketing if I'm just doing this? Now, those menial admin tasks can be taken away so that you can actually be the marketer that you went to university for. Many of us started our careers in the kitchen of marketing, and we spent years learning the basics. As I say, I've been in marketing for a very long time now. So, how to write, how to segment, how to understand a customer. But as the industry grew, we found ourselves stuck chopping onions all day. We've been so busy with the manual prep work that we've had less time to actually taste the food and lead the kitchen. And I definitely have felt this experience so many times when they're like, well, when are we going to get to do this? I'm like, we're laying the foundations, because it takes so much time. AI is your world-class sous chef, right? It is there to support you. It doesn't decide what's on the menu. It doesn't know what a perfect brand experience tastes like. Only you do. You know your brand. You own that brand voice. But what it can do is handle the scale for you. It can prep 100,000 unique ingredients in the time it takes you to blink. So it doesn't replace the chef. It amplifies you. It amplifies you as a marketer. And used in the right way, we can grow our value within the organization. We can show the importance of marketing. And the overall goal is to move from manual ad hoc, one-off tasks to the AI automating your execution at scale with you directing it to that scale. So, and I think someone mentioned this before, the future of AI is more human, not less. So we really want you to think around like the cultural context. So AI can read data, but it doesn't understand the nuances of the UK market or a specific cultural moment that we're in. And then there's relationship building. I mean, I thought immediately of the marketing meetup with this. Like, customers crave authenticity. And AI generated content is flooding the internet at the minute. Everyone is calling it out, like when an image is, someone's got 6 fingers or whatever it is. I was saying the other day, we were in a restaurant with the kids and they gave my kids some coloring, and it was one of those cats, and the cat had 3 hands and like 3 paws, sorry, like it was sat down and then like 3. Well, it had 5 paws, I suppose. I just realized I was saying wrong, but 3 waving paws. And the kids were like, why has this cat got an extra paw? And I was like, oh my God, that was definitely done by AI. So, as this type of content floods the internet, your ability to keep the brand real and trustworthy becomes a premium asset. And I think, again, there's been some questions in around, like data privacy and things like that. And trust is your biggest currency right now. Building trust with your customers is really big. If they lose that trust, that can be, it can really destroy your brand overnight. So that is a really, really important thing in the world of AI right now. Making sure you maintain that trust with your customers is so important. And then AI is great at optimization, making things that 1% better. But humans are great at innovation. And again, the AI tool can only do what it's been taught, what it's learned so far. So we are the ones that are going to take that next step forward. And AI can be doing that bit that it knows, and we can be the ones taking that step forward, growing, innovating, doing the next thing in marketing. Again, I think if you're in that kind of, those sort of beginning stages of AI, start small. Find ways in which you can win within your week and just start testing it out. You don't have to do everything at once. Don't feel the pressure. There is lots of people out there just like you now. But whatever it is, take that first step. We all have technology we're using day to day. So many of them have built in AI. AI assistants are one of the tools that we use, like it's got subject line generators, things like that. Think about ways in which your existing tech stack can support you using AI. Go out and research that around your tech stack.
Our number 3 is about guardrails. So we've kind of had different names for this throughout the presentation: brand guidelines, guardrails, rules, levels, lines to set. But it's defining what's on brand and what's not. And that's really, really important with anything that you're using. Again, we talked a lot about that you're owning the brand vision, you're owning the innovation. There's always an element of, whenever prompting any AI tool, tell it what you'd like, but also tell it what you don't like, so that it knows and has as much understanding as possible. Number 4 is back to probably why we're all marketers, is focus on the customers. Am I being helpful or am I being creepy? For every single personalization effort that you're completing. And Kirsty, I'll let you take us home with number 5.
Sorry, couldn't get the mute button quick enough. So build your AI literacy. I think the whole thing around this is like educating yourself. And there is a lot of talk around there around AI washing, that things that are not really useful. Learn what is really innovation, what is going to support you in your day-to-day and truly going to support your goals of your organization, versus just using AI for AI's sake. And for anyone that is starting out, we've put in a prompt here, which we will also drop into the chat for you, about just a quick prompt about how you can use it to support you. So put in like your top 3 tasks that you do that you maybe spend the most amount of times on. Where could AI assist it? What strategic activities could you focus on instead with that? So that's just a little prompt for you to use to help you get started.
And then we also wanted to share the prompt that we used for our own images. So we want to make this as easy as possible. If anyone would like to create their own image based on what kind of marketer they are, I will add this into the chat right now. Add in a little bit about what you want to look like, what outfit, and then you've got a marketer profile or flavor that you can choose from as well. So I'll open the floor back to you, Joe.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you both so much. I think the greatest compliment, aside from you two showing up as yourselves today, that I can give you is we have the TMM Slack going on in the background while any presentation is going on. And I'll just read the message from James, my founder, who said, "I wonder what the application for TMM about what Movable Ink are speaking about today. How do we personalize everything from the events we share to newsletters we send and what they include, etc.? I'm not sure. I know the question's for us, but this feels like an opportunity." And like, I think this is the thing from today's conversation. So first off, thank you, because like to go through to put the effort into today's presentation is phenomenal. But I think what is really, really important is that you laid a foundation for further thought and a reframe on how we can think about these things. And so the clarity you offered there was really, really helpful. And then combining that with your last section there about how to practically do that. I saw some questions dropping in from folks as the session went on how to do it. And your first point about starting small, picking a problem, etc., etc. I just wanted to highlight what great advice that is, because it is the advice you hear from every person who will bill themselves as an AI expert. But very practically, it is the thing which will make a difference as well. So thank you both, lots and lots. I can also see a bunch of questions that have come in, and we definitely won't have time to get to them all. So my suggestion is that what we will do is we will take them, we'll pop them in Hive. We'll give you the opportunity to answer them if you have time, Kirsty and Rich. If you don't, then the TMM team will have a go as well. So whichever way, we'll get those questions answered in Hive. That being said, I would love to cover off a bit of personalization and the training of the machine, because like specifically when we were speaking around autonomous and agentic and all that sort of stuff, there was a lot of people asking the question, how do I know when my robot is off doing all these activities that it's doing good activities? So how do you practically sort of start building that machine so you can sort of, I don't want to say set it and forget it, because that certainly wasn't your contention, but certainly set it and trust that it's doing the job that you need it to do?
I think I can jump in on this one, Kirsty, if that's all right. So I definitely don't think we're currently at a stage of set and forget, and we're not going to be for a while. Could we get to an element of, pop the kettle on and come back to it once it's boiled? Yes, we could. Now, it's really important to obviously have that curiosity, be able to go into an exploration phase. And I reference this in my section around, AI is looking at the data that it already has. So it's training it on what you want that data to be. So if you're creating your own custom GPT or your own language model, etc., what you want to make sure is the defined guardrails in there are exactly what you're expecting the outcome to be. That's no small task. These huge companies have been creating these open tools for many, many, many years, almost decades. So take it one step at a time, define as much of the do's as well as the don'ts, and then also give feedback to the model as it's spitting out, different variations of what you're asking. With that feedback, you will slowly train it. But, we're seeing AI move so quickly that I imagine in the next year or two, we'll probably find that journey becoming a lot easier as well.
Totally. And I was listening to a podcast over the weekend with a sales chap who had built 20 different agents that he had running at any one time. He was saying that he was spending about an hour a day just going back into each of them to continue training. And that was both from a perspective of refining the output, but then also simultaneously keeping up with the updates from the AI stuff, because the platforms are changing as we go. I'm aware that I haven't asked you, either of you, before we got going on today's session, whether you have hard stops and stuff like that. So, I mean, okay, you're shaking it. Could we take a few more questions? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sweet, fabulous, thank you. We'll take this next one from Aurora then, who has asked the top 3 things to start doing, or tools to use to move from explorer into builder. So at the beginning, you sort of asked the question about folks sort of going from, you presented 4 different levels. And I think explorer was sort of your second level and builder was your third.
Yeah.
Like if you're sort of thinking of going from that sort of beginner / intermediate into intermediate fully, what would you two be doing?
I think one of the things that's always important with anything like this, and maybe I'll get Rich to dive in more about some recommendations, but whenever you're using any tool in marketing, whether it's AI or just a general day-to-day tool, is to consider what your goals are. What do you want to achieve? And I think we've put that prompt in. I think that will definitely help with that response. But I can recommend what I've been doing, but I will know that Rich is using it in a completely different way in his day-to-day. So I think it's identifying what actually would be helpful, what would be supportive in your day-to-day life to make sure that you can get to that, whatever your goal is for this year in terms of your marketing. What are those tasks that maybe you could be using AI for to kind of move to that next level and use it just in your weekly, like whatever you're doing in your day-to-day. So I think that is really important. I think it's going to be slightly different for everybody on this call as well.
I think just to jump in there, Rich, before take your answer, I think that's such an important point, Kirsty, because in effect it speaks to everything which you've been speaking to, right? Which is that you are setting the direction.
Yeah.
And so it's a prime example, very consistent, which is good, because it is exactly what you've been saying throughout, know why you're doing what you're doing, experience, value your experience, and off we go type of thing. So I think that's a really solid answer. So thank you. Rich?
So I was scrolling through the chat. I can't find who put it, but somebody definitely did. They reference just because you can doesn't mean you should. And in my eyes, that is what takes you from an explorer to a builder.
Yeah.
It's having a deep level of understanding of, do I need to use AI in this task? It's not necessarily about, making sure that AI is always relevant to everything that you're doing, because there are going to be some tasks which is just not relevant and it's not quicker or sustainable to do it. I would say from a perspective of, my role here at Movable Ink, when I talk about builder, I build, we have an internal tool called LVEX where you can build assistants, or you have I think it's leveraged as Gemini Gems if you're using Gemini. So these assistants that you can build within a framework of prompts and an outcome that you like can be a really nice next step from Explorer, because what you can do there is actually feed in specific data sources, what it should use, how it should be leveraging it. And if you're leveraging, a company-wide license, you can also tell it not to train the models that it's using. So from a privacy and guidelines perspective, super important to not be putting personally identifiable information into those tools. But there are a couple of assistants that I've built, which we do customer insights journeys on when somebody buys our products, or maybe says goodbye for a little while, and we take all of those interviews and we have an insights gem where you can go in, you can say, hey, can you give me some insights specifically around this, or maybe about an ESP that they're using, or a different MarTech platform that they're using. And it allows you to search for specific quotes and customer sentiments a lot more easily than maybe reading a 30-page document of a transcript interview. So definitely explore those gems or assistants to get to that builder phase.
Love that. No, that's really solid, and I sort of feel that's represented in my own journey to a certain extent. I sort of felt like I was stepping up a level when I start building my own GPTs and stuff like that, which is definitely just very familiar. So thank you for that answer. Let's take the last one, because I think I've tried to hopefully capture sort of the themes of the questions rather than asking specific questions here from the community, because there are so many. But there's a lot of stuff around AI governance, which you mentioned earlier. Similarly, you've also mentioned it in your last answer there, Rich, about privacy and stuff like that. And in the presentation, you sort of said this is for you to decide your own red lines and sort of make it clear. That being said, I wondered whether you had any sort of practical advice or any tips or any things where you've been like, oh, this is really solid on a way to think about building either your privacy or your governance sort of guidelines for folks how to use it within companies.
My biggest one for every member of our team is, if in doubt, don't put it in.
Nice.
We have a fantastic legal governance and compliance team here at Movable Ink who support us in these journeys and the acquisition of the tools that we use. So I would definitely just say, is this something that I would want? Think of your model as a friend. Is this something that I want that friend to know? Yeah. And how much detail do I want that friend to know about this topic? Just be careful what you're putting in. Do look into the options that are available to you to, restrict how you're training the model, restrict what data is being stored and the time frame that it's being stored for. Things like history on ChatGPT is a good way to start there in those settings. Governance is going to look different for everyone at every single company. And it's also going to look different for an individual level as well. So I think just having that conversation with yourself, if it's for personal use, or with your company's legal and compliance team first, will set you in the right standing.
Nice.
Yeah. And I'd also say if you're using free tools, don't put any data in there. I think we've mentioned this already, but just to really be clear, if you're using a free tool, when you put that data in there, that data it's open AI. So be really considerate of that. And then the other thing around privacy is, and I think, mentioned this before about trust, consent. If you're using people's data, think about how you're using that data. Have they given you permission to do that? That implied consent. When it comes to AI, you need to be really thinking about if they've given you explicit consent that you can use that data as well. So just really be mindful of those, especially, I think, again, that's that creepy and that personalization element. It's put yourself in the shoes of the person that's receiving that. I think is that's also a good thing to look at as well. It's if I receive this, how would I feel? Because some of the sales outreach I get from AI, I'm just really? Is this okay? So, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
I fully agree. Thank you both. Thank you for going over 10 minutes as well after, sort of presenting so brilliantly as you have done today. And also, a huge thank you to everyone in the community for being so active in the chat, for being phenomenal with your questions as well. hopefully in those questions that we've just asked, we've covered quite a lot of the bases from within the question. But as I say, we'll capture them and we'll try and answer them in Hive as well for you, whether that's Team Movable Ink or Team TMM. We'll make sure that we get you some answers. That being said, I think we'll close out today's session and just say a huge thank you, Kirsty, Rich, for being amazing, for being so generous and collating everything as you have, both for the School of AI, but also for today's webinar. You've given out a phenomenal amount of information over these sort of past four weeks before Christmas, and then today as well. So you're good people, and it's really, really appreciated.
No, thank you so much for having us.
Not
Yeah,
at
thanks.
all. And thank you, everyone in the community, once again. We hope to see you next Tuesday, because you're legends and you make this special. So thank you for being absolutely wonderful. Well, that said, hopefully see you next week, and I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, everyone. Take care. We'll see you very soon.
Bye.